Okay, I jumped out and I'm jumping back in, so I'm not going to do a preamble. If you're just catching this because you found it on your feed, it's not going to make sense without the previous. All of these go in order, so part 1, part 2, part 3, but actually the fairy tale series kind of builds on itself. So check the information box below to see what's going on, because I don't want to preamble too much. I want to really still be in this channel. So I did take a little bit of a break, and in that little bit of a break, with independence coming through, this is what the Morrigan has been working with me so heavily on this. If you're coming from the previous installment of this reading with kind of this feeling of, you know, that makes sense, but the implications are kind of terrifying. Actually, the most beautiful thing about what the Morrigan has shown me with all of this, and I kind of had it coming through with other deities that were trying to kind of teach me a similar thing. The Morrigan is the energy of sovereignty. So when I'm working with the Morrigan, I am working with the energy of sovereignty in my body. It's the essence of sovereignty. And there's more to it than that, because it's also, you know, that essence also has its own person. Like, you have an essence, and then the person that's attached to it. When the cells in your body are like moving around, they have that essence too. You're with them. But this notion of an individual and this notion of independence, like we're taking a critical eye to it, because sovereignty is almost like this light aspect that says that nothing can affect the essence that you are, nothing can conquer it. It's the white horse, you know what I mean? And that's I don't really know what that refers to exactly, but I saw a white horse and so I said it. But with the moth being an ending, and we're talking about independence, the Morrigan is simultaneously an essence, and sovereignty is part of it. So, like, you know, when we are operating by holding or hosting energies all the time and choosing what those energies are going to be, giving spaces to those energies, feeling overcome by different energies or feeling empowered by other energies, once you kind of hack consciousness a little bit in this way, and again, the ancients had a good command of it, and that's what the stories were doing, and that's what our stories do too. We work our things out through them. It's not an assault on our sovereignty to know that we're constantly hosting energies, and that a lot more is able to perceive and understand our consciousness than just we are, and that is actually giving coherence to the whole. So we have a really important role in the body, in the greater ecosystem as humanity. And so it's important to not be afraid of any of this stuff as it comes through. Now, with what we're talking about is so interesting here, because we're redefining love outside of the story that we're sold, and we're creating a different picture of it, and it's related to connection. And it's like, I keep on looking at these cards, and exorcist, mediator, advocate, and athlete seem like the least romantic words that you can string together as a description of something that I would kind of consider to be like what we're looking for as like supreme love. Like, what is love actually? And so then we come to this notion of soulmates. When we come to this notion of soulmates, this was something that I've been like sitting here in meditation with a little bit. You know, like I did take a break with all of you to sort of check in with the Morrigan. You know, she's definitely she's what I'm channeling here. And her work with me has been really amazing, because she keeps on pushing me to sovereignty separate from an idea of independence. You know, independence is I don't need you, you don't need me, I got it all on my own, and, you know, everything else is just an addition. You know, it's like a house that you keep on adding wings to, but the whole thing is haunted, and there's somebody to credit. Credit where credit's due. It was Peter Rollins who said something, it was like, we are all haunted houses. So, you know, this notion of independence, like, you know, like if what we're talking about in the way of like essences and feeling thrown off balance. You know, we all have like aspects of the past that kind of like haunt us, you know what I mean? And so even if you don't think that you are host to like, you know, your grandfather with their issues, you know, there's a way in which your unresolved issues like haven't matured or haven't like transmuted into something else, and they kind of haunt the halls of the body that you know, the temple that you're in. So we have to pay attention to the unconscious mind, you know, and however that makes sense for us to do, we have to work through these things. With the thing about the Six of Cups being soulmates, you're all my soulmates, every single one of you. That's what the Morgan's kind of been pushing me with. Each essence that you work with, and sovereignty is like definitely a hallmark of, it's one of hers, is going to have something to teach you. And, you know, the Morgan keeps on saying, you know, if you don't bring the context of how you came to sort of see these things, if you don't bring the truth of who you are and the authenticity from which you're speaking from, you're just a bag of wind, you know? And bringing personal stuff into a reading like this is like against every rule and every aspect of conditioning that I've like ever known. And there's nothing that makes me more uncomfortable. 0%. This is like up there with Shark Attack in terms of like the participation aspect of it. So I'm not like loving that the Morgan keeps on being like, you can't possibly not put a heart into the words that you're saying. And so I'm going to be really brave with this. And so she was kind of saying with that Six of Cups, when it comes to soulmates, you're all my soulmates. You know, I always set the intention when I sit down, I like, you know, make a space and I say those who have ears to hear, you know, and a heart that understands and the mind that can comprehend. Like, it's a very specific call. And so if you're here and this is making sense to you and there's coherence in it, you know, collective is like a school of fish. You know, each school is made up of a mass of individuals, but they're all swimming in the same motions. And what's that motion? Soul, right? And so, you know, that doesn't, so Spirit is saying like, you know, and Spirit is saying the motion through time, right? And so we're all the same school of fish, like you are in one way or another, soulmates. That's important. That's really, really important for me to understand that, to in any way have anything to offer you in the way of like, you know, information through my vantage point. And it's very, very important for you to understand that, and so that you don't over identify an ideal, you know, on anything that's coming through. I really encourage you to take everything I say with and look at it with a critical eye, in the sense that I want you to bring your own questions, your own, you have to come to your own center of gravity when it comes to what you believe. And so I want you to never, ever think, like, knowing that I'm your soulmate, that I'm just moving in this school of fish with you, is important for, and for you, and, you know, to take my words with that, you know, grain of salt in a way, but it's also important for me to know that you're able to receive what I'm saying, because you're my soulmates. It's a safe space. And it means we're kind of like all on the same page, like we're, you know, there's no higher or over or under here. There's just me opening up the lens to my vantage point. And so this sovereignty that the Morgan keeps on trying to teach me is very different from the independence that is the energy that I hold that almost breaks me constantly. And so for every essence that we hold, there is a counterfeit that takes. And, you know, so there's an energy that gives and there's an energy that takes. And we're going to look at what that means, like, kind of further down the line with all of this. And that's nothing to worry about, you know, like there's a lot that we're learning. So we want to go slow. So when we think about sovereignty versus independence, and we think about the fact that we do host a bunch of different energies, you know, however they end up influencing us, like, you're going to be the one to determine like what your comfort zone is with the stuff that I'm bringing through. But love and finding love is more about, like, you know, a unity with that school of fish than it is about positioning yourself in a unit that is its own sovereignty. Sorry, the Morgan's like, I want you to slow down because you get so scared. She can always tell when I'm getting nervous. So we're looking at the prince, the actual like thing, the actual object of desire, the goal, the prize, right? It's to find our way home. And so it's to find our way home with ourselves. It's to grow. and in that growth experience, like greater levels of having power and being able to hold power and being able to expand. It's being greater, you know, and being influenced in a way that frees you of all destructive impulses that would otherwise be there. And that relationships and maturity, like we have to mature in relationships to a certain extent. We can't just do it all by ourselves. So finding soulmates is actually not hosting the energy of independence and rolling up to every, you know, opportunity to connect with this energy of independence that says, I'm not a burden. I'm not going to cost you anything. I'm just here to have fun. I'm just here to be representing the energy of like fun and perfection and nothing's wrong and I can't do any harm and like, woo, you know what I mean? Like we roll up with a level of independence that's about, you know, proving our worth by almost like proving that we don't require any like connection. And that's such an opposite way of going about finding your soulmates. So when the Morgan says bring my own personal stuff through, I'm going to be doing that here and there because you're my soulmates. So we're not really doing something performative. We're doing something communal. So let's kind of like talk about this notion of Six of Cups with the soulmates. And let's just talk about this notion of playfulness and aloneness. And we're still on the topic of this exorcist. The opposite of intimacy, the opposite of closeness, the opposite of connection is fear of facing your own demons. And aloneness serves the function of, first of all, allowing you to experience your sovereignty. Your sovereignty is that place within you that is your essence. That's the part of you that always defends who you are. When somebody else tries to project on you, that's why the projection card, I think I moved that out of the way before. You know, the projection card was out here. You know, whenever someone tries to project on you their interpretation, their beliefs, like their sense of what you are, whenever they try to box you in any way, you know, whenever someone tries to find an agenda, you know, in your love, like that, the part of you that rises up and says like, no, like this is me. That's the sovereignty. That's the essence. You know, and in a grander way, gratitude is born there and is held there. And so, you know, connecting with gratitude is connecting with your essence. You know, it's a tricky thing, but there's something really powerful to that. And so being alone will connect you to your essence, which will connect you to divinity. And then divinity can help you sort of like figure all this stuff out. That said, you know, when it comes to finding your soulmates, the desire to be desired is not monotheistic. Because there's been this premium placed on romantic love because it serves consumerism, because romantic love has been dwarfed into a juvenile ideal that you can miss after a certain time, or that you have to keep, you know, a certain sort of juvenile way about the playfulness in which you know, are able to fall in love and hold that love. And what if you get too serious and then it's not fun anymore, and then it's not love anymore. But again, we're talking about a juvenile ideal of love. And we're talking about the idolatry of romantic love versus actual romantic love. So when we think about what romantic love is, it's a part of love that exists on the spectrum. It's on the spectrum. It's love on the spectrum. So romantic love is love on the spectrum of all the different types of love that you can have, and all the different like ways that you can have it. But by isolating romantic love as an ideal that supersedes everything else, because it allows you to create a little unit, the Morgan is saying you missed the whole point. The desire to be desired is kind of what launches you toward a certain kind of connection, but overall, like, all of yourself needs to be appreciated in that. And when we get performative and when we have masks in order to like meet the ideal, we're not showing up with ourselves, and our needs aren't getting met as ourself. What gets met is something counterfeit. So we know that. Like, I don't really need to say that. And I'm losing the channel a little bit just because the Morgan keeps on being like, bring yourself into it. And I'm like, I'd rather not. So when I'm working with the Morgan and she keeps on saying, you know, tell them how you see things. Tell them what it means for you to see. I'm always confronted with this notion of like talking about how I am able to see these things and feel these things and experience these things involves disclosing the privacy that like nobody like sees me talking to myself ever, right? And so that's not something that like people like can perceive, that I'm actively communicating with unseen things. That I communicate with unseen things is the deepest secret that I hold. And it is also like the deepest shame that I nurture, because it is so against the rules and it scares people, and it always has. That there's something about the unseen that when I communicate it, it validates like that this is something that is not just, you know, insane in any way, shape, or form. That scares people even more. And it creates this otherness where I can never, there's no harm in it. You know, like I kind of sit by myself all the time and I think there's no harm in the way that my mind works. You know, it might not work like other people's minds work. Home. Yeah, this is the card, home. You know, being at home with myself, and sovereignty versus independence. When you come from a place of sovereignty into a relationship, that's and also like authenticity speaks to this too. This is such a hard message, man. I'm falling out of this like really, really hard, because it's so hard for me to make genuine connections, because I'm censoring so much that it like what ends up coming out of my mouth is like these little pieces, and those little pieces seem really grandiose, and that's all to say that my story in no way fits like the narrative that everybody else, like, you know, so everybody has a unique story, but mine is like so out there that it falls into the category of cuckoo crazy, except that it doesn't operate as cuckoo crazy in my life. It operates as an asset in my life in every way. So like so I bring that through to say like your school of fish is so unique to you that if you're not expressing those unique qualities, then those that have ears to hear and that can identify aren't going to find you. And you're not going to find them. And you're going to be spending the rest of your life trying to explain yourself to people who are misunderstanding you because they don't get it. They're not in your collective. They're not in your school of fish. And so sovereignty is sort of like, you know, knowing that your community, you know, your soulmates are always out there, but they're also always singing the song that is like the authentic song that you hold. That vibration of you matches other vibrations like that or like that. And so, you know, I'm being shown the whales, and they have a song and they make these clicks and they can feel each other's vibrations 100 yards out or whatever it is. It's 100 feet. I see it's a lot of distance, you know. So whales are able to communicate in a way that seems telepathic, like through like the clicks and the vibrations of their language. And that's how they find each other. And so when you're called into sovereignty, you're called into being at home with yourself so that you can properly express your particular song to find those others that are like you. And it's funny that this is so fraught with fear, because it means putting yourself out there on display for folks that aren't in that school of fish, and they don't understand that current, and that current doesn't make any sense to them, and that current is wrong and because their current is right. And here's where we can really change our minds about what it means to step into, like, you know, if love is about growing and maturing and allowing for these changes to happen, you know, in relationship to each other, and like, you know, it's like a harmony. You know, for the first thing that we have to do is say, like, it's not supposed to look like an ideal. You know, our deepest desires like lead to a level of closeness where we have to face our own demons. And if we can't do that, then we're trying to impose our essence on another essence, and that's power over, power under, and external forces, and oh my God, and what are we gonna do, and it's not fair, and am I vulnerable, and you know what I mean? And what it really, but so like when we understand that it's supposed to be about growth and it's a challenge, you know, in terms of how we express ourselves and what it means to sort of come into a relationship and our authenticity, there's this maturation that happens as we like see how we're seen and how we see others with this Two of Cups. And so we, you know, we move into this mediation phase as our ability to, you know, the ideal that is juvenile, like, you know, that's when you're young. And that ideal should be what it is when you're young, because it's part of your growth process. Like we have to go through the cycles. First there's, the cycles are everywhere you look in nature. And so when we go through the cycles of maturation in love, like, we very quickly go from like, having a level of intimacy that makes us face our own demons. That's the fire, you got to get through that. And then into this place of mediator, a gift for negotiating fairness and strategy in personal and professional life, respect for both sides of an argument. So, I want to, say that first of all, like, it's not independence that you want to sort of bring into a relationship. It's sovereignty. Sovereignty is being so at home with yourself that you bring that with yourself and with, your essence is housed by a lot of other things. You're going to bring in these different energies. And being at home with your essence is an energy of home that you then carry with you. And so this is the sovereignty that, like, we're being told that, everything we're talking about in terms of like all of the energies that we house or that we expand or that we allow to we give power through consensus with, when we're aware of what we are in the way of containers, and when we begin to identify and name demons, they lose all of their power and you just blow them away through revelation every single time. But when it comes to meeting others and seeking others and having a harmony with these energies, again, I'm seeing the kaleidoscope, I'm seeing the symphony. You're one note and someone else is another note. And if you're out of tune, you're not going to be on the same song as your soulmates. There are other people who aren't going to get you or understand you, and then that's not your current. And so there's this piece we have to make with uniqueness. And that comes and starts with our own uniqueness, making the peace with our own uniqueness. And that's sort of what, what the Morrigan is saying, with playfulness here, what it is to come into your own form of self-expression and to sort of celebrate like what is unique about your essence and like, what that means, and to sort of find others that are in harmony with this. It's not supposed to be so painfully serious. So let me just see what that means. Give me 1 second. Luck. I like that. Playfulness and luck. There's and determination on the bottom of the deck. This is a really important thing. Everything that we're talking about here is alchemy also. We're talking about ancient magic and, all of the libraries of valuable religious technology and spiritual technology that was like burned to the ground. We're talking about alchemy here and seeing ourselves as alchemists of our own internal experience. The luck and the playfulness is like an interesting thing to have, that the Morrigan wants to bring out, because we're talking about the willingness to participate here, which is it's a willingness to participate, not just with like people who get us and it's awesome and it's great and I love it and it's so much fun and oh my God, yay. Like it's also a willingness to participate with people who are kind of like, don't get it. Being able to put yourself out there. I have somebody, I'm psychic and I interact with energies, and I was doing, I never talk about people's readings, so that's not this, but, sometimes like your grandparents will kind of show up. This is everybody. This is kind of a lot of people, and not just grandparents, like your ancestors are like, I want to give you this and I want to give you that, but you're so shut down about like doing anything ever or allowing any inspiration to come through. Channeling is us on a spectrum. A good way to look at it is like art. You have inspiration, and that inspiration is then channeled into art. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is channeling deities. So we all can do this. And so when we think about this notion of, your grandparents showing them, they can't channel inspiration if you're shut down. And so when we talk about like forgiveness, and playfulness and luck and allowing for the universe to meet our needs, there has to be a level of cooperation from us around the possibility of soulmates. because soulmates might not be in your immediate vicinity. Again, you know, the whole desire to be desired, the whole, like, you know, that, yeah, that impulse, you know, that's like very natural, you know, kind of calls you out into adulthood, you know, and then you're, you know, you, as you grow and mature through relationships like that are, you know, appropriate and whatever, you kind of get a better sense. And then you know, these are all relationships are vehicles for growth. And so when we look at the Six of Cups, you know, the belief that your people exist, that there are people out there who will understand what you're talking about, that's a huge leap of faith, like massive. Because all of us have layers of like, I hope no one ever, like, you know, looks at me like I'm crazy. I hope no one ever judges me like I, you know, have, you know, insufferable vulnerabilities. I don't want anyone to think that, like, you know, like by, you know, expressing, you know, the authenticity of, like, you know, my strengths and weaknesses, that somehow like I'm a burden. I can go down the list from here until the end of time. You know, when you show up in this independence to the door of every relationship, I don't need anybody, but hi, I'm here. That's an energy. That's an energy that's repellent to a certain extent. But when you show up at home with yourself with a sovereignty that says, I'm at home with me, I'm at home with you, and I'm curious about who you are in the spectrum of love towards me, what that role of your essence that could love my essence, like how that manifests, what the story around that is, what that actually means. That's a very different curiosity when it's not, when we're not aiming for an ideal that's juvenile, when we're aiming for connection that helps us grow. It allows everybody to be imperfect, first of all, which is huge. And it allows everybody to be in different growth kind of places. We're not condemning this one's not that one and I'm better and supremacy out of it. You know, we're looking for the school of fish that is in spirit and the same current that we are. And so Spirit is saying, you know, with this playfulness and this luck, you know, walking into life as if it's not designed to shut you down related to connection is walking up to every sort of interaction with a curiosity that says, basically, namaste. The divine in me sees the divine in you. And, you know, to the extent that you are put in orbit with others, and sometimes you really have to put yourself in orbit with others because your ancestors literally cannot help when you don't allow them to inspire you. And you have to be inspired through movement. And there's only so much, you know, inspiration that can come through with a lack of movement. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow because it does seem really dangerous out there with a lot of mean fish that are going to say, that's crazy. It's okay. They're not in your current. That's all right. They don't really understand how you're doing it. It's painful because it can be alienating, especially if you've been subject to bullying. And the more you deviate from the oppressive norms, the more you signal others to beat you in to those norms. You know, by being authentic, you're, you know, in a kind of a way like sinning against the structure that says we all have to be the same. And so you will have opposition, you know, on this quest, which is why, you know, you free yourself and others of destructive impulses. You learn how to free yourself from the anger that says, like, those weren't my people, and that means all people are bad. No, they're not. You know, with playfulness and luck, again, there's a way in which you're meant to be approaching this that isn't life or death, because the aloneness here, there's a deprivation, there's a what do I do, there's a I can't help it, you know, and then and that's, you know, trying to find the right person in a world where everybody's showing up with the wrong ideal that they're aiming for. What a mess we've made of this, right? And so with the soulmates here being about showing up to play, that's where the luck comes in. That's where the connections can be made. And that means facing your fear of your own demons, facing being judged. Because anytime you bring yourself in orbit of others, you're going to get somebody else's projection on what that looks like to you. Can be like, I can't stand it, or like there's truth in that, and I don't want to, you know, that's maturity and growth and challenge and change. And so with this blooming here, again, in the Two of Cups, you know, bringing myself back into it, we have these lifetime patterns, like, of being misunderstood, and then like, you know, for me, I have a lifetime. Because, and I don't, I got my brother who's like, I don't like labels, you know what I mean? And he and I have actually very similar, and there's not a privacy breach here. He's awesome. Like, it's okay. He and I have very similar learning disabilities. Like, we have a similar kind of, but he expresses it and experiences like very, very differently than I do. But we have some of the same, like, what you might call disabilities, even though they're not really. And again, like, the term autism didn't even come into, it used to just be like a long list of things, right? So, being misunderstood, when your mask is always falling off because you can't comply, you can't come into compliance with the norm 100%, that means the angel of punishment will be with you. That's why that's there. The angel of punishment is there whenever you upset the norm, upset the monothe. You know what I mean? When we talk about the need to accept that all belief systems around the world have this pantheon in one way or another, that's because we're meant to grow through like a cacophony of like essences. We're meant to understand the power that we have in working with, like, the gods and goddesses, the source of these essences and what they have to teach us. We have to be able to identify, like what's going on when we're hosting an energy of something that is driven by like an energy that drove it in life and kept it from crossing over. You don't want to be kept from crossing over by expanding that feeling in your body and holding it. And the perfection of the goddess's, creative capacity is that when energies that, these, I guess you could call them like, they're not demonic. Demonic is a neutral energy. The ancients kind of understood that. But say the energy, I'm going to just use the energy of, what's an energy that I can use? Like, so let's talk about, like, say the energy of gluttony, which that's a tricky one for me. Let me see if I can find a better one. Morgan's like, I don't care how tricky it is. Okay, because, the term gluttony is really mixed up with, like, body superiority, supremacy nonsense. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking like a healthy versus unhealthy relationship with, like, substances writ large, And so this notion of, like, like when your ancestors who are the consciousness that your perspective, your observer perspective, like, they influence you. There's no two ways about it. These energies influence you. If they don't have their stuff worked out, that's why the Roman Empire, you ask these guys, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? All the time. Okay, they're influencing you. There's a reason that empire, like, exists as a spiritual infrastructure. In addition to, like, and it upholds that through the influence that we don't know is there with the angel of night. If we're not aware of our shadows and what they're doing, we really can't exercise them too well. So with the angel of punishment here showing up every single time you act in opposition to empire, you act in opposition to hollowing yourself out to hold an energy that is calling itself supreme at the exclusion of all of your learning, with the aim of making you stay like a child and exalting that childlike state as an ideal, even worse, a romantic ideal, because that's like where the real nasty perversion with the Catholic Church comes in. No offense, but hey, let's talk about it. That's something that needs. We can't look away with stuff that's horrible. We have to address it. We have to try to heal it. We have to talk about it. And when it's as simple as telling someone to not host that energy. Not only does, like, so like the example, okay, let's say gluttony. So let's say that, so say your ancestor starved to death, and like their relationship to food through your experience and their experience through you is to more, until you say to yourself, this is not, I want to be growing in relationship to another essence Like, let's try something else. Let's find out, like, what is this drive? Why is this here? Why is this influencing me? And how can I create a relationship with it so that there is a way for it to be transcended and transmuted through my experience, and then everybody is healed. Everyone is released through your learning and overcoming of energies that are dense, that you're not in opposition casting everything out. So much of Christianity is engineered to keep you childlike in a way that is not meant to be. You're meant to be in your own power, and love is an expression that exists on such a spectrum that any ideals of love are false gods in one way or another. Because it's not the essence that you're working with that gives, it's the essence that you're working with that takes. And that's essentially what you want to like be mindful of when it comes to your power and your sense of your own power and your ability to grow and express. And so when we have, the angel of punishment here showing up every time you step outside of the norm and you say, hey, this is my perspective. This is how I see things. I love myself. Tough shit. You know what I mean? Every single time you do that, this notion that you can't find your soulmates because the song that you're singing pisses everybody off. It bothers everybody because it's too unique. Or, you can't find your song because no one ever let you even like make a noise. And so you don't remember what your voice sounds like. Ursula has it now. How do you get it back? There's a lot to work through here in the way of nature. The mother provides. We see that the mother provides. The example is nature. There's a lot of God provides. No, God doesn't. And I'm not fighting with God because I think there's a feminine and a masculine aspect of the creator. But we have a source of wisdom that is before us and is there before us, and it's there after us. And that is the cycles of nature and how the cycles of nature provide. And they also transmute. They also gives life, provides for life, takes away life, and turns it into something new. Our problem with death, you have to go watch the first couple, readings in the fairy tale series. But once we overcome that, the next thing is, how do we find connection? We understand we're part of this school of fish. And the only way to sort of find that current is to be it, to be an embodiment of yourself, to fully be self-possessed. So, when the Morrigan teaches us about what the alchemy of the energies around us, and finding its name is casting it out, and finding its name is calling it in, and operating with that inner alchemy that is from that place of powerful observation and powerful essence that cannot be compromised. You are sovereign. If you aren't giving yourself away, you cannot be taken. And that might sound really horrible given the way that the entirety of the empire is constructed against that. I keep on seeing the white horse. I don't know why. So when we think about this determination, putting your determination into being the most authentic version of yourself, the most authentic expression of yourself. And there's two ways to find that: spending time alone and spending time with others. And you need to be playful about your participation for others, because, I go to this, I love finding places that are safe for my heart. I love doing that. People are always like, I'm looking for love and I'm on dating apps. And I'm like, that's not safe for your heart. You're looking for love. Go to that funny little, bingo get together with all those awesome little, I love the little book club at the library with the little old ladies. That's where your heart is going to be safe. And, this has come through a reading, but that's where, that's where you find love. And then you build from that place of a cup that isn't, sort of searching. And because the only ideal love is the romantic love, and everything else doesn't count because I have to have that. And oh my God, and I can't waste my time with people. There's, oh my God, when you stop it and when you realize that you need love and understand that it's everywhere around you and it's provided, when you're able to put down the juvenile ideal of what you're told love is, for a much more expansive experience, then you're able to find it all over the place. And it's that curiosity and that playfulness that brings in the luck of your soulmates in all the shapes and sizes that they are. And if that feels disappointing, it's because there's shadow stuff to work through. And it's totally understandable. It doesn't mean that you won't find your soulmates. You absolutely won't find your soulmates if you don't find yourself. You absolutely will find your soulmates if you find yourself. But you have to go to the places where your heart is safe, which probably isn't maybe the club. And from that place where your heart is safe, you can branch out and seek other types of love. From that place where you're already taken care of in community, you can have that sovereign home that you create for yourself and others that isn't compromised or taken advantage of, because so the Morrigan wants us to sort of shift our way of thinking about this in a very big way, and understand that the angel of punishment that shows up to hurt you every single time somebody doesn't get where you're coming from, or they, you know, their supremacy steps in and says, well, that's this, and I've identified it, and I'm me, and you're you. Right? That's, who cares? That person can just go be them, right? That's not part of your current. With the mediator here, you know, this gift for seeing others and having like a respect for both, for everyone's process. You know, and that doesn't mean that you put up with crap. You know, the shadow attribute of mediator is negotiating with an ulterior motive or hidden agenda, either personally or professionally. And I can feel people being like, well, I don't do that. Well, the Morrigan's been kicking my butt everywhere I go. I keep on being like the picture of like, I am so, look how perfect I am. And she's like, absolutely not. You know, this negotiating with an ulterior motive or hidden agenda, either professionally or personally. If you can't think of an agenda that you would hold. Not even the agenda of being right. What about the agenda of being right? Do you hold the agenda of being right in any conversation, in any room? You do a lot of hard work. You research. You know, you read. Other people don't read. They don't research. See, like, this is where we identified supremacy in the last reading. You know, every time you identify the name of something, then when it props up in you, you have dominion over that. And you say, get out of here, supremacy. You don't have a right to sit here. I don't want to hang out with you. You don't have to be right. You know, you can bring your essence and the magnificence of like what you learn and know and the authentic expression of that into every single conversation. And it might challenge and anger people, but those aren't your people, and you're still the steward, you know, of your essence in a way that says, this is what I am bringing into the world. Like attracts like. What is the like that I'm looking to attract? And like looking, you know, and so with this mediation thing is just really interesting. Part of it is the mediation of getting your needs met. Go where your heart is safe. Get different types of love. You know, I like prioritize the spectrum of love over the one mightiest supreme, because supremacy is so sneaky in this way. It kind of filters into like everything, even the stuff we don't think it does. And once you are able to sort of find that center of gravity that says, you know, I am my like magnificent, authentic self, and like people who are sitting here and listening to this reading, whether they agree with the way that my mind makes sense and makes meaning of my experience, or they don't agree, it doesn't matter. Either you get me or you don't. Either you like me or you don't. And like most people who watch, like, either have a strong, you know, opinion that they do, because you can't really get through half of my reading without like really disliking it if you don't. And so this Two of Cups, finding yourself, you know, is a full half the battle, finding your others, your people, your collective, that school of fish that swims together. And so when we see this existence and sovereignty, there's so much, I'm afraid to be alone, I'm afraid to be alone. Don't think about being alone. What does it mean for you to find sovereignty? It's part existence. It's part making a home for yourself and in your life. That means going out and finding safe places for your heart. That means if you run at the things that you love in life, you're going to run into the people that love you in life. If you're running after people, you're never going to find an easy way to, you know, get the people that are going to love you. And it's all about priority shifting. Because once you recognize, like, you know, this, I've been arguing with Morrigan, like I keep on telling, like, I'm not enough. because, you know, I have in my head this long list of like things that I need help with sometimes. And it always makes me feel like, well, you know, this puts me in my place. You know, this certainly means that I, you know, I have to have someone around that, you know, can help me to do these things. And, you know, it's, damn the American crappy, you know, medical system or whatever, you know, I can go on and on and on. You know, like my entire like force of nature has been in service of the false god of independence for a very long time. I am incredibly independent. I am a burden to no one, but to such an extent that I miss the whole point. And so, you know, like when I bring in this learning curve that I've had to sort of come into contact with around like, nope, sovereignty is that's what I'm working with. When you work with a goddess and their essence is multifaceted, you got to learn about what they are in order to have a sense of what you're working with. They're going to teach you through that essence. And those are the energies. And I needed the energy of sovereignty in a way that I had no idea, because I thought I had it because I was mistaking independence for that. And so this existence and coming into this place of your own power, and understanding that you aren't left helpless. You know, we look for God in the world all the time. And we're like, not there. Don't see it. If you think about God as essences, it's a lot easier to access the power of those essences and to bring those essences into your experience to help transform your life in a positive way. Monotheism took a lot when it took away this sense of what we are and what it means to have beliefs. And there's so much. But, you know, when we see this Four of Wands and traveling, that's an interesting combination right there, because yeah, I'm just checking the time. We're okay. Let me have some water. It's time for me to grab more cards. Work with a couple more cards. You know, the Chariot on the bottom of the deck says that we're going to a new place with all of this. And the Angel of Visions is like, first we see it, then you can't unsee it, and you'll get there. You know, it's like a new vision for what love can mean in your life. And again, we're not saying that you can't have certain types of love. We're just discrediting the monotheistic, you know, supremacy of types of love, you know, like over others, and the value of one type of love. You know, it's a kind of a thing. How do we value love? You know, what does that look like? With the Father, the eternal child. It's the second time we've seen that. And the Pilgrim related to traveling. One more. Oh, the Mirror, of course. And the Riddle. With the Castle at the bottom of the deck. I'm loving it. Actually really like where this is going. Okay, let me spread this out a little bit. We might take a second break right now as we move into, so mediator is going to be like the process of like, you know, this like mediation between those that don't see with eyes to see, you know, those that walk right past that burning bush, that is like the value of your essence, and those that do, you know, those that are part of that current that you're in, and those that are avoiding that current that you're in, or those that, you know, are a different current altogether. Allowing for everything to sort of exist with the existence here under the mirror. So let's move this over here. Yeah, this is really interesting because we've got innocence here too. This is innocence. So your soulmates, that desire to find them and to be found by them is really kind of like, you know, your call to yourself and yourself elsewhere, which has been interrupted with this Saturn energy with the Father here to a certain extent. And I'm trying to figure that out. So just give me a moment with this. And I think we're going to break this up again. We're going to come back. I'm going to take a minute. And then I'm gonna, so I'll just do like part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll try to stagger them so that, you know, there's enough time to sort of digest what comes through. But at the same time, you know, there's no cliffhangers. So let's take a break and come back. Okay, so in order for this not to be, and if I'm launching right in because you have to watch these in order or it won't make sense. So I'm not going to do a preamble. I'm just going to keep on going. It's a part, whatever it is. And you need them in order. I think it's gibberish. So in order for this not to be so epically disappointing around this idea of the ideal of romantic love that we've all been worshiping for so long, there is an attachment there. Let's just be clear. And when we talk about attachments that are harmful to us, are a lot more than just like, an energy. An attachment to like an ideal that isn't good for us, whether it be a body ideal or a ideal, like prior, like putting supremacy in like one type of love or another. We have attachments to what we worship and what we're told to worship, what we're taught to worship. And, I think it's really important for us to not be disappointed by the way the Morrigan is bringing through our, like, I want to say course correction around the way that we look at love, and not just like romantic love, but like all love. Because when we were talking about Prince Eric in The Little Mermaid, believe it or not, we're still on that. We're really trying to say, like, at the core of who this person is not something that can be boxed into a type of love and then have to stay there in a certain kind of juvenile ideal. But rather there's a transformation and a growth that relationships are supposed to facilitate. And the goal of relationships is supposed to be around like the ideal of like facilitating growth. So when we look at this father and the eternal child, like that kind of strikes me, especially because I consider the castle to be a representative of you, of the body that you're in. Like I think of this as like a temple, and you're walking around with a temple. It houses your spirit, your essence, the God, the aspect of God within you. That you can connect to, that has its own divinity beyond you. And these essences, they have their own divinity. They exist before and after us. So with the father and the eternal child being here around this notion of like, we're still looking at like who we are as people, who Prince Eric actually is, and I have to sort of reference the first, on like whatever 2 videos back to this notion of like New Kids on the Block. What was that as a concept of love for me? To be like infatuated with like a boy band when I was a little kid, obviously, but like it was a counterfeit. It was the advertisement, not the thing. It's amazing how these things take root. So when we give up the ideal, like, every time I look at that father card, I think about like, this is weird that this is coming through this reading, but there's this death of God theology, right? So death of God theology is about this. It's a branch of Christianity. It's like the only branch of Christianity that I kind of like. The rest of them, I'm like, nah, but this is this notion that, at the foot of the cross is when you get to the cross, my God, why have you abandoned me? That is the first moment that you're going to have a chance to connect to true divinity. Before that, the only thing that you're connecting to is a story that other people tell you about who God is. It's not until my God, why have you abandoned me, that you have any shot in hell of getting anywhere near to the truth of what divinity is. Because divinity can never be contained by a story that's not divine. It exists before and after the container that holds it. It's really powerful. And so, with this father archetype here and with the eternal child, the father archetype, especially in this deck, I have to read it, but I think this is almost exactly it. The father is like every archetype has a positive and a negative. And so when we talk about like the prize, Prince Eric, is the goal or the prize. That's what we're trying to connect with. So when we have a proper valuation of what a person is, then we're not connecting with, trying to connect with an ideal and really mad at someone when they're not the ideal we're trying to connect to. Again, false gods, it's always the false thing. You have to discover that that's not what it is in order to have an experience of the real thing. And so when there's this little bit of disappointment around this notion of like giving up the ideal of romantic love that was worshipped and cherished, that's an ego death. And I need some water. That's an ego death right there. So I want us to think about that, because, you know, with the eternal child, which is really this notion of the value, the essence, you know, like that's divinity. You know, when I channel the deity plane, I'm channeling the intelligence of like these essences. When I say that your ancestral gods and goddesses speak to your giftedness, I'm talking about like knowing where your aspects of divinity come from and how to interact with them. And when I tell you that it's so much more than that you can connect with anything that you have a connection to, again, like you're singing a song, and what resonates with that song, that's your current. There's not really a lot of rules and regulations here when it comes to what's the energy that you're holding and working with, and that's holding and working with you. The only thing that is a problem is when you are convinced that you have to abandon yourself for the supremacy of anything. Because that's actually the root of all evil. And the Father, you know, being defined in what it isn't, the absence of, is a really powerful kind of a disappointment, you know. So when the people who have failed the ideal, they're disappointed. The disappointment is, you know, it's like when you meet somebody and you fall in love and you have this, like, all these things in common, and they're, oh my God, you see me and I see you, and we see the divine in each other and we worship it in each other, and then, you know, they fail the ideal. And then it damns the whole process and all of the things that are associated with it. But if the ideal is growth, if the expectation is transformation, that's a very different process. If the abundance is that we exist on a spectrum of love and our needs are met from all aspects of love, and there is no, you know, supremacy in love, then you don't have to be like, oh, there's just no love in this world, I can't find love. Go to the library. Go to the library reading group. I promise you there is a group of beautiful women, like, and men that are well into their, like, retirement years. They're there to read books. They're a safe place for your heart. They've lived a full life. You know, there's love in this world everywhere. You're never really alone, in a sense. What you box yourself off with is all of these conditions around what love is supposed to give you, what it's supposed to look like, how it's supposed to, if you don't get it that way, then where do you live in the status of things? Like, this is all perversions on love, you know? And so when the Morrigan comes in to say, like, you know, the eternal child, this is your essence. You know, when you work with the essence of the divine, like, you're getting to know, like, you know, divine energies that you always carry with you. That's how the goddess never leaves you. That's like looking for the kingdom of heaven within. You have all of these aspects that they're present with you to teach you. The goddess is so close, present with you to teach you in the essence that you need to call in through recognizing that life force, that essence life force. That's, again, I can't, I'm all for pantheism, let me tell you. So with the pilgrim here, the mirror, and the riddle, I love this, you know, because this is sort of talking about, like, you know, love, and we kind of dealt with the mediator card. You know, we dealt with the mediator card here under, you know, and I like this. What's right under the mediator card is flowering and existence. Stepping into your authenticity is stepping into the current where your soulmates swim. That's your collective. And to get a connection with them is only to run at the things that you love in life. And to value love in a very different way than you do, because it's going to lead you, you know, to all of the deepest, you know, connections and desires that you're meant to have anyway. Flowering is about creativity, and it's about expression. It's about taking that inspiration that comes in and bringing it into the world. And then once you're in the world with what you're bringing into the world, you're bringing into the world the authentic expression of yourself. Some people aren't going to get it. Some people are going to point their finger and say like, you know, you don't adhere to my values. And you can say like, good. I'm glad we've gotten that over with. I can move to somebody who might hear. You know, like it's a flexibility, and it's not really resentment or anger either. You know, the rejection cycle comes from not meeting ideals, and somebody didn't meet your ideal, and they didn't see you as meeting their ideal, and we didn't meet each other's ideal. That's not to say that there aren't horrible people that reject like wantonly. There are people that do horrific things to other people who they perceive as having some kind of a vulnerability that they can exploit. And the danger of showing up authentically, is that if you show up authentically, if you are very open about all of your stuff, then people will have a parade projecting on you. But that's what we mean by mediation and negotiation, is that rather than taking this personally, that connection to the divine that you have, that holds you up, the connection to all the sources of love in your life that don't necessarily like look like an ideal that you're supposed to work hard to achieve and pay into the system of, but something else, you're upheld, you're supported in your journey of mediation, trying to figure it all out and learn through the experiences. And spirit will lead you as you present yourself and as you create into that void between you and everyone else. Every time you communicate, every time you show up authentically, you're creating into a void, into the space between you and everyone else. And that creation is a bridge. And whether or not it finds like its place to land, it will. If you're not trying to make it fit an ideal, I need the ideal of that to look like that. It can't look like my neighbor is like so funny with their dog, and like, you know, like spirit is like it's everywhere. And so we have advocate, we have travel, and we have pilgrim, and I love this because once you get the knack of negotiating fairness and strategy and your personal, you know, life and professional life, once you kind of had like learn to have respect for the kaleidoscope that is everyone else's process in concert with your own, everyone else's process in concert with your own, that's what you're respecting. That's not a supremacy, higher up, lower than. That's a hard thing. That's a hard pill to swallow. Let me tell you, I have a really hard time respecting the process of my evangelical mom, because I feel that it's very damaging to me, you know, and I want to kind of sit with that a little bit, because that's a, you know, what is the Morrigan saying about what is real love? It's a real person. It's encountering yourself in a real way. It's encountering others in a real way, in an accessibly real way. And so, you know, part of what it means to negotiate respect for both sides of an argument, like that's a very simple way of saying that archetype of the mediator is really about like, it's negotiating with the kaleidoscope of everyone else's process in relationship to where you are, and to be free of this notion of supremacy. Again, once you know its name, you're like, oh, supremacy, get the hell out of here. You're disempowered immediately. Then you can begin to see love in places where there's so much loneliness in this world. There's so much aloneness because people stop building into that void that separates the void that separates them from everyone else. They stop building into it. They stop communicating into it. They stop feeling like anything that they say has value because they don't look like the ideal, and they missed their chance to be the ideal because that was juvenile. Love looks so different. You know, and so I like the Morrigan's always telling me the premise of the question is wrong. And I'm like, you know, I was talking to her, well, fine, romantic love, what are we talking about? Your premise of your question is wrong. Like, she's really cool. I like the way that she thinks. So with the pilgrim, the riddle, and the mirror here, you know, like coming into a relationship with yourself that is sovereign, that is unaffected by the process, like by the positioning and the process. I mean, it's a dance. It's always kind of a problem. You're always going to find yourself in a position with somebody who doesn't know what to do because they don't know if how they can position themselves as better than you or worse than you, or you're allowed to be better in that way, but I'm going to level you over here. Like, you're going to be in that soup. And it's unfortunate. But with the pilgrim, oh my God, that's so good. I don't know if you guys got this or not. I'm always afraid to repeat myself, and I should really like go back to these other readings and see if this came through, where this came through, because it came through somewhere. All right, I'm just going to throw it in because even if I'm repeating it, it's still such a good observation that the Morgan taught me. So I work with the Morgan right now, and she's teaching me things. And so I don't know what came through a reading or not, but because as I'm working with her, I'm doing all kinds of readings. But there's this notion of the turd in the soup. And I don't know if this came through a reading or not, but what it means to be in community is community. Think about community as being a soup, right? And like everyone has to eat it. We all have to eat it. Everyone's got to eat the soup. So what you want to make sure when you're in community is that you aren't like adding to the soup something that everyone has to eat that tastes bad. What does that mean? What tastes bad? In consideration. And so I'm going to bring my life into it. And my neighbors don't know that well, they do, but this is a story with neighbors in it. And I think that some of them actually know who I am because they're my friends and they watch this, but I'm not talking about them. Let's just pretend I'm not talking about neighbors at all. How do I put this in? The Morgan like pushes me in this way and I'm like, oh, what? Why are you doing this? Okay, so there's a communal little laundry room. I'm going to do this with a lot of love in my heart, so it can't possibly be offensive. There's a communal little laundry room that we all use. And everybody has, it's like 4 families that have to use like one little laundry room. It has one washer and one dryer. And we kind of have to all sort of negotiate how to use it. So this is community, this is a communal space. Now, there's the family with the baby who they're going to leave their laundry in there because this is like, she's got a baby and she's tired. And like, if there's laundry in there and it needs to go in the dryer, I always know, that's the mom. I'm going to actually put the quarters in. I'm going to do the dryer for her. Like that's what you do. Like, in my mind, that's how I respond to, this is a soup where it's community. We all use it, but how I respond to her kind of like relates to the tone and the taste of the soup overall. And so I'm going to respond with compassion and understanding. Then I've got the other neighbors who they're like college age, like freshmen in college. Like there's like 5 of them. And I guess they had a hard time with housing. And so like their parents moved from that spot to like give them that spot. And it was kind of a swap because of all kinds of things. And those kids treat the whole, thing like it's a dorm. And, they had very like permissive parents who kind of like, and I'm not saying bad things about them. I think they're like the cutest group of little college kids. But when they leave the laundry in, then it's like putting a turd in the soup that everybody has to eat because because they're not really mature enough to understand that you don't just leave the wet laundry in there, making it so that nobody can use the machines for like an entire Sunday. The mom who does that, we can sweeten the soup with a little sugar and the laundry goes around and we have some compassion. But the like willful ignorance and like the disregard for others in contrast with like a million perfect political beliefs is still the turd in the community soup that we all have to share. So that's what I kind of mean by making sure that you're never, it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means that you're like working on yourself and self-aware enough. That seems like a lecture to people. I hope that doesn't come off that way. That's what the mediator is in relationship to others. You know what I mean? It's like not a perfect like formula that one size fits all. You're constantly moving with it. Now, do I like cast those, freshmen out of the apartment because they don't have the, maturity to understand what it means to not be the turd in the communal soup when their intentions politically are obviously so good to be about like community? No. But this is what it means to negotiate and mediate. It's a very imperfect system. And, always ask yourself, am I the turd in the soup that everybody has to eat when you're in community? And if you find that that's the case, it may be the wrong community. It might be a bad community that wants to make you adhere to their thing. Or, there are a lot of really desperate people that there's there are communities that aren't safe. But there's also the other aspect there. Oh my God, this feels like it's going off the rails. It's okay. Let me just sit with this because I kind of lost myself. I didn't want to go into that whole explanation too much, and I hope that it's not a repeat of something else. But these questions come up when we're talking about finding friends and relationships and community. How do I put up with all of this and that? And what if that happens? We're meant not to stop creating into the void. We're meant not to stop communicating by all of these little stupid things. We're just meant to sort of constantly work with the alchemy of the soup to the best that we can, so that the community that we are part of like benefits from the nourishment that we bring. And that doesn't mean not having any problems or burdens. That just means being like a part of what makes the soup nourishment. Okay, let me get a hold of myself. Humility. These moments are such humility for me. So with the advocate being about inspires you to put compassion into action, that's kind of what I was just talking about here with this journey and traveling. You know, you're meant to keep moving and keep changing and keep growing. And sometimes you're going to be like, you know, finding yourself as not contributing to community in a way that is bringing that, where your essence is bringing nurture, you know, nourishment. And sometimes like it's an exchange, it's a kaleidoscope. So why do I bring all of that up? Why did we go into that long foray? And the Morrigan's like, calm down, there's plenty of time. We went into that long foray to talk about what it means to check the energy that we're holding in community, that we're bringing into the soup. Because negotiating with an ulterior motive or hidden agenda, either personally or professionally, is the shadow aspect of what the Morrigan wants to point out in the way of this is not love. Love does not have an ulterior motive or a hidden agenda. And sometimes that hidden agenda is hidden even from us. And a good example is the agenda to be right. Because I might not be right about, like, you know, those kids. Maybe they're just as neurodivergent as I am, and they have object impermanence, and that can't be helped. That's why that whole example's there. Because community is an imperfect process of negotiation, and love is an imperfect process of growth and negotiation as well. And that's not in opposition to sovereignty. So, you know, this is where we create into the void. We don't let things shut down our voice. We continue to sing our song because it's going to attract our people. We are connected and to community wherever love is. And from that place of maturity, we move into a position of being able to inspire, to bring compassion, and to put that compassion into the action of making a really good soup for the whole. Gosh, I hope that that's coherent with traveling here, you know, and the pilgrim. This is like a life's journey. You know, the life's journey really isn't just about your experience of you. It's your experience of yourself in community. And right now we do not have community spaces that are adequate or that safe. We have to create them. And so when we see the Four of Wands here about being this celebration, you know, once the profit from all of our energies and from all of our travels, you know, comes back to us. Four of Wands is also about a wedding, you know, coming into like union with another in a way that love's ideal looks different. Love's ideal looks like the old couple that just know each other's names, barely anything else. You know, that's beautiful right there, you know? And so that's kind of like, you know, when we change our perspective on what it looks like to, like, when love stops looking like a specific position ideal that's placed in time, and if you miss it, you're screwed. But when love looks like its definition actually looks like a journey, a long arc towards the hopes of getting to the end of it, with having amassed enough lessons, you know, in relationship that there are those around you that are still on the path when you're at its end, and that have been traveling with you. It's a traveling companion. What is the ideal of love? Ideal's love is traveling companions. People who will move with you and grow with you and move away when, you know, they're not in growth with you, but you're going to have others that are. I'm being shown the current with the school of fish. The love of your life is not one person. It's your soulmates. You know, it's community in relationship to all the other kinds of love that exist for you. And so, you know, the mirror and the riddle is like, you know, we have to solve the question of who we are in relationship to other, because it's just baked in. That doesn't mean being shut down when people don't see us clearly, or they misinterpret us, or they see an opportunity to, like, you know, I don't know, do something stupid with our, you know, there's so many ways in which people just, yeah, we just gotta let people be people. I hope this is coherent. What a lesson, you know, with advocate being, you know, about, you know, love being about being on this journey. And the process of love is movement and growth. The opposite of it, the opposite of inspiring you to compassion and being able to take action in that compassion and inspiring others to do the same. The opposite of that is committing to causes for personal gain. My way is the right way. My belief system should be your belief system. Your mode of expression, it doesn't make sense to me. That seems like you know, like all that stuff, you know, when we're negotiating with what we find along the way on this journey, there's going to be a lot of that's not me. And there's going to be some that scares me. But ultimately, like, you know, this is kind of hard to like leave it here, but I keep on falling out of the channel in a way that makes me think that like the Morrigan kind of does this thing where she's like, yeah, that's it. That's how it's, you know, the journey of love, you know, the all of the ways in which, you know, your heart can grow in safe environments that have nothing to do with an ideal that is prescribed for you to like work towards, to trade your voice for. The counterfeit that imitates the true thing. She's saying, you know, you're looking for family. You're looking to be a part of a family. That's why romantic love like precedes it. You know, the whole goal is to sort of have those traveling companions on this road. And family can look like almost anything. Family can look like your pets even. The sovereignty of life is just that abundant. And when we're like, oh, you know, my dog isn't, you know, a real relation. Of course your dog's a real relationship. Ever lost a dog? There's no better example of a real relationship. That we have supremacy in the types of relationships that's a pretty deep reach of that particular essence of evil. And so when we solve this riddle of who we are in relationship to others, when we take that playful stance and we allow spirit to like infuse all of our interactions with examples of the spectrum of love that is available to reflect us to us, you know, that's basically like the roots, you know, I don't know, I was doing a meditation where I was working with the trees outside and I was asking them to teach me trust, since they trust the earth to hold their roots. You know, there's no cap to the ways in which relationship can heal and be available to sustain you and reflect back at you, if you take away like all these limitations about what it has to look like to be of any value. And so when we look at the athlete here, you know, dedication to transcending physical limits, including handicaps, development of personal willpower and strength of spirit, and success underneath, that's the Six of Wands. Why does the ideal of love for the Morrigan look like two half senile old people like ambling down, like, though I'm seeing people there, what are they doing? She's showing me like, I don't know, it's like digging for clams. And they've been doing this their whole life. Every, you know, Sunday morning, they take this walk and they do this thing, and they only remember the movements, and they know each other, you know, like more as presences than people. You know, they're getting close to being able to transcend the physical limits of love's, like reach. Transcend the physical limits of love's reach. She's like, that's the ideal. To transcend the physical limits of love's reach, which is what we all actually desire. And so she's like, you change the whole picture to a journey of growth and transformation over time as being what you're looking for. It never runs out. There's no better or worse version. There's these, you know, relationships that are like the tops of muffins that happen at the end of life. Top of the muffin is the best type. That's the best top part of the muffin. So, you know, the Morrigan is really here to say, let's move into a different vision altogether of what it means for you to get your needs met. because the abundance that the mother provides is there. And if you can say, oh, I don't know if God provides, well, you know, when we're talking about the divine feminine aspect of God, we just look at nature. The goddess provides. We're the only species on this earth that doesn't feel that way. We're the only ones that are like, there's no food in the fridge. Ah! You know, I look outside, there's, you know, a bunch of crows out there. They don't say there's no food in the fridge to the earth that provides for them. And so I kind of, you know, so the Morrigan is saying, you know, like, let's think about all of these concepts of what it means to think of love like a pilgrimage, where people are going to join you and then they're going to leave. And then other people are going to come in and then they're going to, it's a whole thing. And it's about cultivating that relationship first and foremost with that divine spark within. That's your base. And then not putting any limits on how love presents itself to you. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at, I think is Triton. Yeah, Triton. Like I got the story, like I wrote out like little notes about like what happens to Triton, you know, Triton's protection. That was like Ariel's father, like the protective influences around you, who wants what, you know, best for you, like even if it seems restrictive, like, or, you know, what is the, we're working with the Morrigan. So like, you know, really her influence around that. So that's, you know, this is a long series. We're really only getting through like one plot point at a time. But I think that by the time we're done with it, we're going to have a really comprehensive sense of at least how the Morrigan perceives this fairy tale. Man, this is really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to like leave it here for now. And I think I'm going to like cobble these together and sort of post them like kind of not like all at the same time, because I think that that's just like overwhelming. Like the Morrigan's like doesn't matter. So anyway, so basically like I'm going to put these out and then I'm going to come back and do another spread where we're going to move into this territory of like the protective influences. And then from there, you know, we're just going to keep on moving through the story. And then Morrigan is doing really cool stuff with stories. I also wanted to, just like before I sign off, I'm going to put the Patreon up. I'm doing it. She's been pushing me. I've been like pushing against it because I don't like, I say this because it's like a weird thing, but I really don't like attention. Like I like it. I don't like it. So, but that said, you know, we're soulmates. We're part of the same school of fish. And I'm putting Patreon up there. It'll be with these videos. We're going to be learning together. It's going to be like a book club and then a create space. So take a look and I'll see you again soon.